Michael Scheer. Where's Michael? There we go.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wonder if you view this trip that you're on and the actions that you've taken here at the G20 and with the bilateral meetings that you've had as representing a break from the foreign policy of your predecessor. And if so, could you describe where you see and how you see the principles that guide a different view of the world?
Well, I didn't accompany President Bush on his various summits, so I don't know how he was operating, and I won't, I won't warrant a guess on that. I can tell you that what I've tried to do since I started running for president and since I was sworn in as president is to communicate the notion that America is a critical actor and leader on the world stage, and that we shouldn't be embarrassed about that, but that we exercise our leadership best when we are listening, when we recognize that the world is a complicated place and that we are going to have to act in partnership with other countries, when we lead by example, when we show some element of humility and recognize that we may not always have the best answer, but we can always encourage the best answer and support the best answer. So I think that's the approach that we've tried to take in our foreign policy since my administration came in. Now we come in at extraordinarily challenging times, and yet I actually think that that calls for this type of leadership even more. But ultimately, we won't know how effective we are until we look back a year from now or 2 years from now or 3 years from now and see if it worked. And what the American people care about, I suspect, is the same thing that the British people care about, and that is, are you putting people back to work? Are businesses growing again? Is business is credit flowing again? And that's just true with respect to this summit. When it comes to our Afghanistan policy, the question is going to be: have we made ourselves safer? Have we reduced the risks and incidents of terrorism? And so, the proof of the pudding's in the eating. But hopefully, I think at least we've set a tone internationally where people don't where they give us the benefit of the doubt. They're still going to have their interests, and we're going to have ours. They're going to be tough negotiations, and sometimes we're going to have to walk away from those negotiations if we can't arrive at a common accord. There are going to be real dangers that can't always be talked through and have to be addressed. But at least we can start with the notion that we're prepared to listen and to work cooperatively with countries around the world. All right. Let me sprinkle in another. It's got to be an international person. All right. This young lady right there.
Mr. President, Emma Alberici from the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. At the moment, in the US, the UK and in Australia, executive salaries and bonuses are decided in the boardrooms of major publicly listed companies. Who will be making those decisions on salaries and bonuses as a result of the agreement you've made here today? And if it is still the boards, will they be guided by principles or legislation?
The principles that we outlined, I think, put in place move us in the direction of what I consider to be best practices, which is that there is some accountability with respect to executive compensation. Now, theoretically, that should be the shareholders, but the way that too many corporations have operated for too long is that you have a CEO who basically selects his board. The board, in a fairly cozy relationship, oftentimes with the executive, hires a executive compensation firm which surprisingly tends to think that it's necessary to retain the best talent to pay people $20 or $30 million a year. And we get into the kinds of habits and practices that I think have not served shareholders well. I think ultimately distort the decision-making of many CEOs. When I was in the United States Senate, I actually worked on a piece of legislation that would make the simple proposition that executive compensation should be subject to a shareholder vote, even if it was non-binding, so that there was transparency and accountability, and perhaps a shame function that would take place. And that principle, I think, is reflected in these guidelines. What it says is that if you get shareholders involved, and those shareholders are given a set of principles and best practices by which they can judge executive compensation, then you can still have outsized rewards and success for successful business people, but it'll be based on not short-term performance, not three-month performance, not your ability to flip quick profits off products like derivatives that don't turn out to be particularly productive to the company, but based on sustained effective growth. And that's what's embodied in these documents. And I think that you're going to see a lot of countries try to encourage that kind of transparency and accountability. It doesn't mean the state micromanaging. Excuse me. I've been fighting this all week. Doesn't mean that we want the state dictating salaries. We don't. I strongly believe in a free market system, and as I think people understand, in America at least, people don't resent the rich; they want to be rich, and that's good. But we want to make sure that there's mechanisms in place that holds people accountable and produces results. Okay.